How many episodes are we in that
This
we're
is
so surprised that you hit record?
22. No, 23. 22.
We need to stop jump scaring ourselves into an episode.
But this time we did come prepared with the topic because JD has a special report for us. JD would like to get it. Oh, right. Ice cream you meme. I'm Ben.
Okay. Damn. Thank you. Because I completely lost the link. Hold on. Ben, I'd like to introduce you to. This is not as last week we had a little bit of an SFW section when it comes to the 50 Shades of Grey,
right? Yeah,
the Dom jeans and all that stuff. Today we're
Is this more or less safe for work?
It depends on whether I really go into it. If this is going to be a one-on-one conversation on not necessarily the birds and the bees, but this was like the alphas and omegas. Welcome to our special section where I introduce Ben to fan fiction tropes. My name is JD, and I used to work at Archive of Our Own, a very famous fan fiction place. I saw your support tickets, and I called you weird inside my head. Just kidding. Okay, so everybody knows the alpha males.
Yeah.
The beta
especially
males,
if you're listening to the podcast, you know,
if you're
alpha
listening
male.
to the podcast, welcome to the Alpha Male podcast. But what you don't know is that sometimes when us alphas are talking about being alphas, there is a section of the internet that is laughing at us. Did you know?
Well, they don't take us seriously?
They don't take you seriously because they come from the background of fan fiction. Today, we're going to talk very briefly about the alpha, beta, omega trope. This is the Omegaverse. Okay. Okay, so the Omegaverse is, I'm on a website, I'll link it in my doc, but it's a name for a trope that involves gender identities or secondary sexes that are usually alpha, beta, and omega. Okay. These are given to people. They're assigned at birth. Some fan fictions will have people randomly switch.
Sure. But
usually they come on during a person might, in our world, a person might get their period upon puberty. In some Omegaverse worlds, they might get their period and then their designation.
So is it a formal designation? Do they they know that they're like an alpha, beta, or omega?
Yes. Okay. They are basically it's supposed to be like, oh, the alpha of the pack kind of thing. It's like designated on like those sorts of roles. So the alpha I'm gonna clip this and this is gonna be on TikTok. But okay, so the Omegaverse dynamics, they came from like the Wolfpack dynamics, alpha, beta, and omega kind of thing, and it became popular in fandom around 2010, kind of the same time as Teen Wolf. But what really where it started is the supernatural fandom. Right. Which is not surprising because you're like, oh, Teen Wolf, it makes sense that there would be wolf dynamics in there, but supernatural also makes sense, right? So Twilight also had it because they had
werewolves.
Teen Wolf. I mean, werewolves. I haven't seen Twilight just yet.
We'll watch it together.
Okay. So it's basically this like this kind of thing where it's like designation. The alpha has the I have to make it through. The alpha has the ability, is sort of like the.
You got this.
Okay, let's do this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The alpha, you can be any gender.
Okay.
Any sexuality as the alpha. Sure. Right. The usual, right? You know how everyone's like male, female, blah blah blah, kind of thing.
Right.
The usual sort of like thing that it goes with is alpha and omega.
Okay.
Right. The alpha is the one that can. Okay. The alpha is the one that can impregnate the omega.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Alphas are usually, as we know in the general world, as being alpha, they are dominant. They are big. They are like, you know, the what's that, like the Pixar kind of thing, where it's like if it's like a male dragon, it's like fucking huge and shit.
Right, yeah.
But if it's a female dragon, she's very small. She's got eyelashes.
It's like the sexual dimorphism, exaggerated stuff.
Like,
yeah, sure.
I was like dimorphism, blah, blah, blah. Right. So that's what the alpha and omega is like. kind of thing. So the omega is going to be like real, like small, femme, childbearing hips, because they have to be able to carry the child of alpha kind of thing, right? The typical idea of an alpha is they're protective over their omega, and the omega is like really submissive to their alpha, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. But obviously, there's like tropes of versions. People will write alpha, omega, alpha, and then we cannot forget the betas, who are just people who in the omega verse world who might just be like normies.
Okay.
They maybe don't have a designation.
Yeah.
Their designation is beta, but they don't have like alpha, omega kind of thing.
So they don't necessarily fit within the dynamic of the alpha and omega.
Okay. So if you were like, I'm a beta and I scored an alpha, you're like, hey, you're reaching up. If you're a beta and you scored an omega, like, why are you taking omega from alpha?
Right.
Get the fuck out of here, right? Beta is supposed to be like, you got to be like beta, alpha, omega.
Okay.
Right? That's like straight.
Yeah, like a beta can't handle an alpha and an omega.
Yeah, because the alpha's probably way too big for the beta. Right. Too powerful. And the very key thing about alphas and omegas is that alphas go into rut, which is, if you know it, they go into that and they get real aggressive. Horny. And they're supposed to be they're supposed to be taken care of by the omega.
Okay.
The omega, they go into heat.
Yeah, right.
And they're going to get taken care of by the alpha. So the beta usually in stuff that isn't subversive can't handle that. Can't take
That's a lot to sign up for, sure.
So sometimes maybe an alpha needs 2 omegas.
Okay. So you mentioned, so does MPreg come into here as well? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can have, depending on like the gender, the sexuality kind of thing, you can have like MPreg. This is the deep cut. I remember when I was in the Glee fandom a long while ago, there's a pairing that is Santana and Brittany, and they often get Santana is the alpha and Brittany is omega. Okay. So you can get, Santana will be able to get Brittany pregnant. Okay. If Blaine is the alpha, Kurt is the omega, Blaine can get Kurt. So different kinds of abilities to get pregnant exist. One of the common sort of like things about the alpha, beta, omega universe is that there is a heat that can be very debilitating for the omegas.
Okay, yeah.
You know how people sometimes when they get their period, they can't fucking like get on with their lives because it's like fucking difficult and shit.
Yeah.
This one's like hype it up,
right?
Ramp it up.
Yeah. They got like COVID level brain fog when it's like in heat.
COVID level brain fog. So that's why sometimes there's a little bit of like people really try to subvert this whole like level of like when the omega is in the heat brain, are they able to like say yes to whatever alpha if they're not a mated pair, that kind of thing. So yeah. What day is it? But yeah, it's typically like that kind of thing. Okay. So you have the alpha and omega pairing, so that's kind of thing. So sometimes when people are like, yeah, you got to be the alpha male, like, okay, someone will probably think of like, yeah, where's your omega then?
Right.
Or like there's like a common joke in like fandoms who are not maybe like the biggest fan of it, or like they know it exists, like they'll like, I know some of my friends like do this where they'll jokingly go like, go and heat omega to like a random person.
Sure.
That kind of thing. And then, you know, it's got a lot, it's a pretty big world because you can go into like the ruts, the heats, and there's like the medical aspect of it. You can go into like rut suppressants, heat suppressants, that kind of thing. If you're like an omega who's like, I got a job to do, I won't let myself be held down by getting pregnant, I'm gonna go on.
Heat suppressants. Okay.
That kind of thing.
So but it is like from birth, like it's a biological thing. Yeah. So like you can't be like, I'm an omega, but I think I just want to become a beta.
It's like, it's more of like, if you think of it as like
I'm tired of having heat, so I'm going to go on a heat suppressant. Like, would you like transition into being a beta?
I haven't, like personally, I haven't like, because I don't read this.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
I have not encountered that, like, sort of, but I imagine because the world of fan fiction is huge, that must be like a thing, right? Okay. Happens in the real world. There's a real way to like shift it into the alpha beta like dynamics kind of thing. There's often times where it's like because there's like implications on what it means to be an omega, there's a tendency for an omega to be like the trophy person.
Okay.
Oftentimes alphas will get into their space, kind of say like, you're an omega, you need an alpha, anyone taking care of you during your heat, and you're like, shut the fuck up. Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Back off.
Yeah.
So they'll maybe like, their thing is that like, I'm gonna go on suppressants, pretend I'm a beta,
right?
Or or like the people who like are written to be breaking out of like the stereotype of what an omega looks like, or what an alpha looks like. You're an omega who's like beefy, Buffy, and Buffy and Tolly.
Yeah.
Beefy, Buffy, and Tolly. And everyone's like, oh, what's up, bro? You're alpha. And you're just like,
little do they know.
Little do they know.
I'm ready to get bread.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a loaf since you want to get bread so badly, that kind of thing. And if you're like an alpha and you're like kind of like twinkish and everyone's like, oh, do you bond?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So it's like, you can see how it sort of reflects kind of real world issues as well. So
you could be like a power bottom alpha kind of. Yeah.
And everyone's like, what? Oh,
yeah.
You're supposed to be in go and right alpha. That kind of thing. And then betas are just kind of like, guys, don't forget we exist.
Just we're here. But yeah. I'm here. Not part of this really. We're just around. Okay.
Yeah, you're just like, well, yeah, but that is like the general gist of alpha, beta, omega. There's a whole bunch of that I didn't say because I didn't want to get lewd.
Okay. Yeah.
But I sent you the link, man, and everybody else listening, good morning.
Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to Ice Cream You Mean.
Yeah. So today we started with JD, I believe. Yeah,
we're starting with JD because JD really wants to hear what Ben is going to talk about. Yeah. So, okay. Today we're going to talk about getting lost in the sauce. But before we get lost in the sauce, let's talk about when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I became supremely convinced of the existence of one of the worst pieces of media out there. That even up to now, I had to turn off like show images on the browser just in case I saw it. I am not exaggerating about my feelings towards this piece of media because for the longest time, I had to sleep with the light on. I had to sleep with my iPod Touch light brightness all the way up on like a white screen because I was so scared. And I blocked this on Tumblr. Like I used like the missing E thing and I was just like, blah, 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 blah. Don't let it show me. And then my friends had to tag it when they reblogged something from a show. And I was afraid for a very long time.
Right.
And it sometimes still scares me. This was the infamous Squidward suicide story that it basically involves like a group of animators viewing a new episode of SpongeBob, just like having a review of it as they usually do. And it was like, ooh, and then suddenly things were going wrong. All of a sudden there was like the dead body of a child, Squidward, and a mutilated body, that kind of thing. And it was passed around as like a story in our Filipino language class. And I remember I'm like both sides, my friend in the front, my friend in the back talking about it. And I'm like, shut up. This is terrifying. You don't understand.
You were debating the situation. You were like, leave me out of this.
The situation. And I was between two alphas who were just like, let's scare each other. Like, God damn it. But yeah, now being an adult, I know this is not real. Right. So I'm like, back up. It's not real at all, but the picture is still scary. Like you've probably seen that picture of like
classic image, red eyes, right? Yeah.
Right? Like I hate it. Like I think, you know how when you like my brother has done this before, like he's not very keen on like the Ben drowned image of like Zelda. He's like, anytime I see it, I just have to look at it because like you can't just not look at it.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
That was
Yeah,
like, every time I see it, I'm just kind of dead staring at it. I'm like, look away, JD. But yeah, that I was like, oh, this is, no one's going to be able to see this ever. And it turns out it's not real at all because it's not real.
Yeah.
And this is not the lost media that we're going to talk about, but it was very much claimed as a lost media. But if that's not what lost media is, JD, then what is? Now, Ben, a question for you. What does BTS, Bangtan Boys, and Perry the Platypus have in common?
I don't know the answer to this riddle. I'm going to end it.
Ends in a riddles to me. They have this in common, okay? Quote, disclaimer, I did not write this. It went viral on K-pop Twit, our X, in 2018, but was deleted by the original creator, and only the first 50 tweets were archived.
Okay.
It has been considered actual lost media for years. I apologize to OP for re-uploading this, but this is such an iconic part of Stan Twitter. So we're going to review this. So this is it. This is an important piece of lost media within the K-pop Twitter fandom, specifically in the BTS space. We're looking at history right now.
Yeah.
And just a reminder for everyone, this is not a Phineas. This is a Phineas and Ferb Twitter AU, not a BTS AU.
Okay.
They just like BTS. Don't get it twisted, okay? Doofin Perry Twitter AU. So I don't know who is playing who because I'm not too familiar with BTS, but there's information on the doc itself. Yeah. So this is important. Lost media in the K-pop Twitter space. And I'm going to stop sharing now, but I'm not going to leave the call. Okay. There you go. Okay. Let me go back to my script. But yeah. So that is how we're starting today.
Yeah.
I know we started with ABO. We're going on to K-pop Twitter, and now we're going back into lost media. If you're still listening and you haven't shut your brain off. But yeah. Okay. So what is lost media? According to Wikipedia, the lost media Wikipedia, lost media is an umbrella term describing examples of media that are non-existent, missing, or unavailable to the general public. Mm-hmm. There's a great debate on what lost media covers, but the generally agreed parts of it is that lost media is stuff that's been lost to general public access, right? No, you not being able to access a scene from a DVD that's been cut in the US but is available in Canada is not lost media. It's just been location locked for you, right? Get yourself a VPN, whatever. Yeah. One of the interesting parts in determining what lost media was is this quote from the subreddit for lost media, which is physical items such as plushies, maybe like graphic tees that were really popular at one time, are not media and as such cannot be classed under the umbrella of lost media. So unfortunately, none of the Paddington merch that I wanted a couple of years ago that were bought by some rich European women that won over me on eBay are lost media. Yeah. But inside and to me,
they are lost.
Yeah, I got to keep the dream alive, right? And additionally, lost media is not media that you can't remember the name of. Just because it's lost to your mind, that means it's lost to everybody else, right? So remember on the Reddit page, if you don't know the meme, if you don't know the name, don't post it there because that's not lost media, right? Okay. So now Ben and the crowd, think of some things that you grew up with: animation, movies, TV, etc., and like think of whether you can look it up, right? Can you stream it? Can you find a copy online? Right. Can you buy it somewhere?
Get it from your library.
Get it from your local library. Get it from a friend. Like, think of like something from your childhood. If you can't answer those right now immediately with a yes, maybe it's not necessarily lost media, but you just can't find it just yet because you haven't gone to the third and fourth page of Google, right? Yeah. But you might need to do like some detective work to figure out how to get that. But if you think that the thing that you're thinking about, even if you went through an extensive process of like looking it up, you wouldn't even get what you want. And you just remembered. I highly suggest checking out some of the lost media communities that are present on YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, and all these other social sites, because you might have just realized something that so many others have had. Right. That time has taken from you what you can never get back. Sucks to be you. So when did the search for lost media start? Now, because the sort of like the person that started the lost media wiki site started it-ish in like 2011, you can surmise that it goes back like just way before that. We're like time eternal. People have been looking for stuff online or in real world for a very long time. But yeah, the Lost Media Wiki was started because of an ongoing crybaby lane Reddit hunt. We'll talk about later. We can surmise that the general search for lost media has started way before then. According to the Lost Media Wiki site, breaking off from its original Wikia hosting, the site was founded in November of 2012, then moved to its own independent host in 2015, and has been steadily growing since its humble beginnings. There's a bunch of communities online that exist out of the Lost Media Wiki space. You have El Supersonic Q, who focuses on like a general lost media space, from youth-focused TV to shows based on mascots, to Ray Mona or Bob Dunga in a couple of articles, who is a general like focus on youth TV shows, but also the special flavor of girl game media as of 2 years ago. And then we have Blame It on George, who is like a common like person people listen to when it comes to like creepy lost media. Sure. And a bunch of like other things. But before we get into it, you may be wondering, what are some big lost media that are like sought after? To name a few from a Reddit thread that I found, we have a bunch of Doctor Who lost episodes that may have been recorded over because they're like, whatever. Cutscenes from 2001, A Space Odyssey. A whole bunch of Macy's parades, but also some really terribly morbid ones that I feel like I am completely fine that the world will never ever get to see them.
Like morbid Macy's Day parades?
No, like if you know of Christine Chubbuck, the reporter who...
Oh, like people dying on live television, stuff like that. Okay.
So that kind of thing, right? Like the recorded version of that, Steve Irwin's death, Owen Hart, the wrestler's fall to his death, and like a bunch of others. Like even going as far as like someone mentioned like the second angle from the JFK assassination. Those are like, to me, if you're like, this is lost media, I'm like, it's fine.
Sure.
You don't really need that. Right. These are all very interesting in their own ways. And I would even argue that some of them do exist and are lost for a very good reason, right? I don't think we're really owed a view of someone's passing just because it was someone who was famous or became famous afterwards due to their passing or news of their passing, right? Yeah. So how does something leave the lost media realm? One of the more frequently cited examples of lost media being found is the Crybaby Lane example, which I talked about just a little bit ago. If you're not familiar with it yet, Crybaby Lane is a Nickelodeon film from 2000. I keep wanting to say 2000 when I was practicing that part. From 2000, that got a lot of flack during its original airing for apparently being a little too scary for children. Who are watching Nickelodeon. It was sent to the Nickelodeon dungeons, never to be re-aired because parents just didn't want their babies to be scared shitless. Right. Understandable. Good night. But yeah, 12 years ago, someone did post on Reddit the following statement or a sentence. TIL, today I learned, Nickelodeon released a TV movie in 2000 that was so scary that they only aired it once. It is now considered a lost film. All right. Wow. If I saw that, I'd be like, why? How scary is it?
Yeah.
Why?
How bad can this be?
How bad can this be? That was posted, and then 4 days later, Fire Salad Peach.
Glasses on. Time to read.
Fire Salad Peach says she actually had the whole thing on VHS and can get it out for everybody to see. But she's like, oh, I know this. I got this on VHS. Obviously, some time was taken because she had to go from VHS to like...
digitize it.
Yeah. Because how do you do that? Maybe it was easier to do it 12 years ago because everyone was like, I've got a lot of VHS tapes. Yeah. I know Costco was able to digitize my parents' wedding. But now I'm like, what is the state of those VHS tapes, right? But yeah, a bunch of people offered to help turn it into VHS tape, to turn it into like a digital form. Right. Fire Salad Peach deletes her account and goes missing. Everyone's like, what the fuck? Did you get nuked by Nickelodeon? Right, yeah. She probably just deleted it because of all the attention. And then people were like, Fire Salad Peach is a faker and a liar and an internet troll. Yeah. But then, like a phoenix, Fire Salad Peach comes rising out of the ashes with Crybaby Lane in full, available for all to download. 4 days of waiting for Crybaby Lane. 12 years and 4 days.
Long time.
Fire Salad Peach comes through. What a fucking legend. And of course, that link is now dead, but it's still not lost media again because it's now up on YouTube for all to see. Yeah. No longer lost in the slimy green sauce of Nickelodeon's dungeons. That one felt a little easy because it literally just took 4 days for someone to say, hey, I know this is lost.
I have some VHS. Right, yeah.
Yeah. Fire Salad Peach was like,
I got you. Yeah.
I had this shit, right? But honestly, it can get quite difficult. The adult audience focused first episode of, do you know Kappa Mikey?
No.
Oh, wow. It's on Nickelodeon. I'll send you a picture of that later. But yeah, the adult audience focus, what? The adult audience focused first episode of Kappa Mikey took some months to unearth and release to the world. I even sent the creator a message on Twitter and he just very straight up said, I haven't seen it in 10 years. Good luck, said L Supersonic to Brenton Blanchett of ID in 2020. L Supersonic says that this was his favorite of all his searches as it taught him a lot of things that were incredibly helpful to his future work in the lost media space. He L Supersonic learned a lot of techniques in that search and has since applied it to future source searches. I can't read today. I have applied to. I put on my glasses and I can't read more. Future searches and how one goes about contacting people and trying to find stuff. Such ID. One fun thing I took away from this ID article, as someone who still has family VHS tapes and cassettes and other hard media from the past, is when Lost Media Wiki founder Daniel Dykate told ID that he recommends people to look through their old VHS tapes. Look through your old computer files, because that's where these things end up being found, in the most random places. Because, like, honestly, Ben, what if we had shit like that?
Yeah. What if you had Crybaby Lane?
What if
that could have been you? You could have been the one that led it. Yeah.
Right. So now that we've kind of got like the context of how, what, where, when, why, let's talk about some of the lost media stuff that I found like way before all of this. In the past, I came across a couple of lost media searches that have really piqued my interest because they were very random and just kind of like completely interesting. Both are still active, so I highly encourage people to check them out. We have first Celebrity Number 6, which focuses on a fabric that contains pop art style photos of celebrities. Does this sound familiar to you?
No.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay. So this fabric was probably purchased around 2008, according to the wiki page. So far, it's unsolved, and you can go out there and get that W and find it yourself. And Ben.
Yeah.
Ben, I'm going to fuck it. What if right now we solve this shit? Because you know who it is, okay?
Do we know what celebrities are on it?
Yeah, we do. We
sick.
Do.
Okay.
Okay. So we know what celebrities are on it, and then who...
Kevin Spacey, Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to tell you the time. 2008, okay?
Oh, okay.
Think of people from 2008. Well, how old was I? I was 14. Okay?
Yeah.
Let me share, don't leave, dog. Scream. My God. Okay? Ben.
Okay.
Who is this?
I don't know. Who is that?
Who is this?
Who that?
I was hoping you would know. I was hoping I'd pull this up and you'd be like, "Oh, this is da da da." I was hoping you'd have a live fucking solve.
I have no clue. So people are trying to figure out who this is?
Yeah. So people are hard trying to figure out who this is, because here's the thing. They have found other people. Let me zoom in on this.
Yeah, right.
So Adriana Lima, very easily. This one's Josh Holloway. If you watched Lost, you might have known.
Oh wow! So these are like some B-listers. No offense to some of these people.
We have Adriana Lima again, Jessica Alba, Travis Fimmel model. Then we have Ian Somerhalder from Vampire Diaries.
Yeah,
I don't know, and then Orlando Bloom. So we know some of these people.
Yeah.
Now, who the fuck?
Who is that? I mean, she's like, no offense, she's kind of, like generically Hollywood looking person. She has a very distinctive chin though, like chin jawline. Like that jawline could like cut glass.
Yeah. So when people are looking for this image, like kind of like filling in like the missing spaces, I think a lot of people are like, because the eyes, you can sort of like be like, oh, this is blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This is blah blah blah. But it's this that they're trying to match, the ear shape, the jaw shape, and everything.
It's like a bald. Maybe she's a Baldwin. Is it Haley Baldwin?
I'm not. The celebrity had to have been around in 2008 enough.
Okay.
Right. So can't. She's younger than me, so she's younger than you, maybe. I think.
Okay.
As well. Okay.
Yeah.
So, stop sharing. Do not leave. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Celebrity Number 6,
wow.
And I was like, me and Ben are gonna solve this because I'm gonna show Ben this fucking picture, and Ben's gonna immediately say who it is.
We can get there eventually. I think if we really dive in on it, I think we can figure it out.
Ben, last episode we literally couldn't tell between Dakota Fanning and Dakota Johnson.
Wait, is that Kristen? Is it Kristen Stewart or Kristen?
People have said, okay,
yeah.
Okay, let me list who people think.
Fundamentally,
it is, okay?
we also have to find the source material, right? We have to find the image that they use, the reference image.
Yeah, you have to get the image that is used, but people have found that sometimes the images are a little bit skewed, so you can find the picture that it is basically this picture, but the eyes are pointing in a different direction, or it's a little squished. Yeah. So there's definitely a source photo, and then it can be all
a little bit
warped,
right? Yeah.
Right. And I'm completely honest with you, I have no idea who this is, and I am of no help. I was just depending on you. And just to ease the way through, it's not the following people: Taylor Kitsch, Olga Sorova, Olivia Wilde, Kristen Bell, Kate Hudson, Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt, Hilary Duff, and Angelina Jolie. Okay. And it is also not Kristen Stewart, because I looked up some names that I thought it might have been, and I was like, Kristen Stewart, Camilla Bell. No, right. I was wrong. And Penelope I'm hoping Cruz. That those names meant something to somebody. Yeah, right. I was like, so I recognize a couple of names, but anyway. So yeah, I literally, my only thought was like Camilla Bell, and then I looked it up, like Camilla Bell 2008. I got it. I'm going to solve it. Yeah, it's not.
We should do a live stream where we just look for this as a sidebar. Yeah.
Let's absolutely do that.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But another one, this one is particularly very interesting to me. It is the Everyone Knows That / Ulterior Motive snippet. Do you know this one?
No.
Oh. Okay. This is a song that the internet sleuths have dubbed Everyone Knows That. Regardless of the fact that everyone surely does not fucking know what this song is. Yeah. There's lots of theories out there. Could be a Japanese band, a Euro pop song, some guy dicking around with everybody, a car commercial jingle, and everything under the sun. Ben, open your mind up. We're going to listen to this, and I'm begging you to know. I want sweet words to come out of your mouth where you're like, oh, JD, I know what song this is.
I got your hopes up after that last one, but
okay. I'm gonna open it, and unknown song. Everyone knows that. Okay. First, we have to check that this can be heard. Can you hear this?
Yeah, I can hear that.
Okay. What song is this, man?
No clue. I mean, I definitely see where they're coming from with like the Europe or like Japan thing, because it definitely doesn't sound like English is the singer's first language.
Yeah. The sort of commonly thought lyrics for this is, it's like everyone knows that everyone you're counting all the sheep in the sky, caught up in a world of lies.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that you've got ulterior motives.
Okay.
Tell me the truth. Every move shows. So those are the believed ideas of it.
Yeah.
Stop, don't leave. Okay, cool. So that is another fail.
Yeah. Hell.
We did not know what song it is. But yeah. But now I enlist our little creamies. I keep forgetting that's y'all's name. Run free, little creamies. But after the episode, because we're not done yet. Anyway, so let's talk. Now that we know what Lost Media is, gave you some examples for you to go look at. Please, for the love of God, find that. Don't find it until Ben and I do a stream trying to look for this person. Okay.
This episode won't come out before the stream. We'll be fine. Okay.
I need the Everyone Knows That clip to be figured out in my lifetime.
That's a good goal to have. That seems attainable.
According to the last episode, that'll be the previous episode. That'll be
26.
Yeah. So I'll be 68.
I got time.
Yeah. So y'all, you've got time, right? Anyway, but now that we know that, let's talk about the concept of finding lost media or working on finding lost media. Personally, the idea of finding lost media is very cool to me, right? You get the whole like, oh, I found that. I have that, right? You got the Peach one where you're like, actually, I have that on VHS. That's a cool feeling. But like a very specific example of it is that when I was younger, I was in quite a few like singing competition shows in the Philippines. I think there's VHS tapes of them here in the US that someone owns, maybe an aunt or uncle from like the early 2000s. And I always wanted to find them just to upload them somewhere and show them to like my nephews and nieces at a later point, but also to sort of kind of like relive that an entire like 20 years later and kind of see how it was as a little kid, right? And to me, that's like my own personal lost media, right? It's not online. Maybe there's like a wiki page stub of the TV shows. And you and I basically grew up in a time like that, right? The sort of like hard media that we find sometimes difficult to translate into like digital media or like it gets lost because like someone's aunt or uncle forgot where they put it.
Yeah.
But
plus with like VHS, it's like this. There's a fairly short lifespan for them. Like they start to degrade fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was looking through the Crybaby Lane one, everyone's like, "Oh my God, stay away from magnets. You probably have like the only VHS of this ever." There was a big concern of the person rewatched it on VHS.
Yeah.
Because they were like just trying to check if it was still good, and everyone's like, okay, so like, what if when you're watching it, it gets absolutely eaten by the VHS player? Like you basically the last person to see it ever, unless Nickelodeon's like, we got you, right? That kind of thing. So everyone's like, oh, be careful with it, and she was just like, no, it was fine. I ran it through. They're like, what if you just watched it for the first time for the last time?
Yeah. Well,
so that's the kind of thing, right? So for me, when it comes to like the personal lost media, like someday I'd like to get that back just to see everyone who I competed against, the shows that I was on, the memories of being a kid and singing and cringing at the fact that like, and one of the competitions aired, and I very much remember how I reacted to it as a little kid was like, it was like our thing, and then it was our time to sing like Beauty and the Beast, that song Taylor's Oldest Time kind of thing, and I knew all the lyrics and it was going fine in the crowd, and then my duet partner forgot all of the lyrics, and I remember being on stage and I was like and the second we got off the stage, I run into the bathroom pissed, lock it, and my grandmother is yelling at the child's mom. She's like, oh, you guys were so good at rehearsals, and I was so angry. And I like to find that child now and see how you've grown up and say sorry, because I was kind of a bitch, but also like,
you choked.
Bro, if we won, my God,
think where you'd be right now. Yeah,
I think I'd still be right
here. Very successful podcast.
A very successful podcast. But I imagine that this feeling is tied to a lot of people who are basically seeking out lost media in general, right? There's a sense of this need to find and complete something. I want to remember the name and the face of the kid that made me lose that competition. Someone wants to find an old Disney TV show, right? And I'm about to get a little bit purple prosy here, but sometimes you sort of like randomly wake up with a need to find something that you watched when you were a little kid, and you find out that it's not like available for the world to see, and you've looked it up, and you like all of a sudden realize that like a couple hundred people are like looking for it with you. There's a community in the memory of like something existing, right? Like everyone seems to remember this exists. You guys kind of share like memories of like, remember this episode, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, I've never seen this before, but we have together, right? You want for something together and like smash the puzzle pieces left that you have together. So that's really nice, right? And in a direct sense from Raymona, one of the YouTube lost media people, there's the draw of finding girl games, which is something that was and is still deeply misunderstood by creators. Her focus was on the Mean Girls video game, which kind of touches on the like the idea of like the mystery of like the internet knows that it's missing, but there's a lack of interest in finding it. Right? The idea of a lost game for a piece of popular media was cool, but as a girl game, it's kind of dismissed even like when it started. Right? A girl game is makeup, clothes, walking around flirting with boy.
Right. Yeah, me and my cousins used to play. We had like a Bratz game, and like I have a very ingrained memory of there was like a hairdresser character that was like a very gay man. He'd be like, "Oh boys," and it was like his time for like doing the makeup, and he'd do like, "Oh boys."
Yeah, look at that. Yeah. The girl game. Girl games can be
fun.
Very right. So Mean Girls, the video game, Ramona found was just another girly thing, just girly things sent to the depths of video game hell. Brendan Bell, writing with The Verge at the time, notes that enthusiasts see lost media as a way to preserve history, even if it's something as obscured as a canceled video game or lost TV pilot. Ramona further adds that it can help us get a glimpse of the time that the piece of media was made. The same way that every other piece of media goes, existing media, lost media can show us what was a focus of the time, and even some reasons as to why things were scrapped or lost to all of us, right? If we think of Crybaby Lane at the moment, like if that aired on Nickelodeon, we'd all just be like, I guess, right? But back then, like, why was it such a thing for parents to be like, this is the worst movie ever, take this shit off air, when it's just like, my kid has probably seen worse now. Or just turn it off. You don't need to see Nickelodeon ever again, right? Right. The Library of Congress need not preserve every single piece of media, right, in the world around it, but everyone else can take part just the same, right? which is to say that unknowingly the screenshot or that video that you might have recorded real life could be a thing that saves a piece of media in the future.
Yeah.
So yes, to your grandkids, you may go ahead and leave those 42,567 screenshots because you never know, right? In terms of lost media, as just a general reminder for all of us, several weeks ago, I learned of Infinity Train from HBO. Are you familiar with?
Oh yeah, we watched a few seasons of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it was on HBO, or at least was from HBO, because Petrona Radulovic of Polygon reported that HBO removed 63 dyslexia. HBO has removed 36 shows and movies from its platform, including a lot of kids and family content, such as Sesame Street spinoff, The Not Too Late Show with Elmo, beloved Cartoon Network show OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, and Teen Drama Generation. These shows are available online on different platforms across the, forbidden seas. But it's a reminder that shows available to stream but are not on physicals can just be, ripped from your precious hands, right? Petrona of Polygon helpfully notes that this isn't brand new, ripped out of plastic, rip me out of plastic, and make them brand new kind of stuff. Disney has had a long history of sending their shit to the dungeon, pulling them out later as like a nostalgic cash grab, and just pulling it from your hands.
Yeah.
Oops. Right? Networks, studios, whatever, can hold on to a piece of media, film it, never release it, film it, release it, but never make it widely available, and so many other things that they're rightfully shat on about all the time. Eat shit, you guys. But yeah, Petrona adds that one of the ways to sort of still show love for when these things kind of happen is streaming where you can find them available, buying physicals, or if you can't do any of that, screaming into the void. But remember, everybody, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, and Zhang Yishao or Chengxi aren't the only famous sea-based ship travelers out there in the sea doing
questionable activities.
Right? This is why I am 100% behind buying up every copy of Adam Sandler's Click. I don't care if I can find it online because some dude filmed a video of it and uploaded it on Daily Motion or something like that.
Yeah.
If I do not hold it in my hands, I do not have it. Right? Yeah. If I can't access it without a subscription, that is completely lost to me, right? Yeah. Right. Just like we said in the beginning, I highly encourage you to check in with your local libraries and see what sorts of physical media they have. Over here, we have a very famous TikTok librarian, Solano County librarian Michael, who is a big person to follow on TikTok when it comes to learning more about libraries in general, but specifically to those in the same county as myself. Or would like
Michael's a Solano County guy?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah. Oh, great.
I literally saw one of the videos and then I was like, I know where that is.
Shout out to you, Michael. Shout out to Solano County Library.
Solano County Library. So libraries, they're not just for books. They're not just for internet access. They're for your warmth, for you to chill, get access to a printer, 3D print, instruments, DAWs and everything like that, physicals of video games. Why do I keep video games, DVDs, CDs, cassettes, and so many other things? Support your local library.
Yeah, free Wi-Fi,
right?
free air conditioning.
Yeah,
go to your library.
Go in there. Peruse, get yourself a library card. I think some libraries even have like national park passes that you can, that kind of thing.
Yeah, some are starting to rent out like Wi-Fi hotspots. There's all kinds of things happening in public libraries. Yeah,
love your local library. But let this discussion remind you of the wonders of physical media, memories, and the ache for community joy and memory. Go get that Space Jam DVD. That VHS tape of you at your first birthday that might have some random TV show or song playing in the background because you might be the last person to have ever recorded that as it went missing. Because of all that hard media you have, you never know what you have in your hands. So that is lost media. Ben.
Yeah.
Thoughts, concerns, comments, ideas.
Yeah, so I mean, like the ways that media can be lost in terms of like being intentionally kind of suppressed versus just kind of forgotten, left by the wayside. I think it's like a good reminder of just like how much stuff is made all the time, and like the shift kind of from these old like depository. This is a little archival nerd. These old kind of depository styles of archiving things to a more distributed thing. Because, a lot of even like individuals can now have the potential to like digitize and get things onto stuff like the Internet Archive. For the Internet Archive, if you don't, they really need it right now because they're getting the shit sued out of them by because of stuff about controlled digital lending. It's a huge issue right now. It's going to really it could really change the scene of the internet. I mean, they preserve, web pages as well. It's a very important service they provide. Yeah, I mean, like the motivations for also like that intentional suppression, like the motivations for getting rid of things is interesting. Did you kind of look at that at all? Like I've heard online a little bit about like the HBO Max stuff kind of being like they don't want to pay residuals.
Yes. Yeah. So residuals, perhaps because of the focus on removing family and children-based media because they want to move away from that sort of audience. And that kind of thing. So it was a lot of the removing is because you don't want to pay people who are longer than they can, as highlighted by the strikes that are still ongoing as of recording this. So yeah, it's a lot of just like, I don't want to pay anybody.
Yeah,
we're not in this audience anymore.
Right.
Fuck that.
Yeah, and I think like also like with the way that like the current media landscape is set up with like, Netflix started out very low priced, not sustainably priced, right? Because they wanted to draw more people to the platform. The general shift to digital media and to the idea that things will always be streaming and available is a lie. That you were sold. Yeah. It is not the truth of what they want to provide because they don't care about providing as much access to as many things as possible. They care about making as much money as possible. It's going to be about profit. And if it becomes more expensive to pay people out, they're going to start just taking stuff off. I mean, that's what's already happening. So yeah, I mean, for sure, it's like an important thing in terms of just like, if you like something, get the physical copy.
Yes, absolutely.
Find a way to find the physical copy. Our other options so I think it's an important conversation to have because I think the idea that things are on the internet forever is also just not accurate. Like
you've got the Wayback Machine. Yeah, that's fun, but sometimes not everything is like
archived there.
Yeah, so that kind of thing. And shout out to everyone who's still being considered a hipster for getting a CD, DVD, vinyl out there. We talked about it in a previous episode, but the K-pop avalanche chaos of all the music getting removed from streaming services and people not having access to their legally streamed content because they didn't have access to any CDs. Shout out to all the K-pop fans who are buying up all those CDs because you will forever have them and that kind of thing. So
also it's better you're supporting the creators that you like if you actually buy their stuff directly to them. So even if it's like doing like a Bandcamp thing or something like that, support the artists that you like and fuck the streaming services, really.
Remember Bandcamp Fridays. That's a good day to buy your songs from Bandcamp. That really I believe a higher percentage goes to the artists on Bandcamp Fridays.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Yep, really cool kind of stuff. Physical media. Get you on it. Get you that Adam Sandler click. I don't know why this is my point of contact. This is my point of contact at all times.
Because what do we really lose if we lose click? Like that's an important question.
So much.
Also, I was thinking, and this kind of will tie into my subject a little bit, but like when I was taking like archival classes, they talked about how like a huge percentage, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, of like early film, like studio film, is lost. Like we will never have it. Like the idea that these things that you're seeing in theaters now will be around forever is not necessarily accurate. I mean, it's just like like so much stuff has been lost. So many memories are gone. And so much of people's life work is just not accessible and never will be, probably.
Yeah, I saw that in several of this stuff where it's like a huge bunch of like silent films have now been completely lost because they are either like I guess it's whatever. Like the Doctor Who ones is like I remember the part of it was just like they were just recorded over. So like bye. Yeah,
and I can't remember. There was like some show where like that's kind of a narrative that they have, or like a little kind of fun story they have is like, oh well, we almost like weren't picking. I can't remember the show. It might be Jackass or something like that, where they were like, it was almost just completely deleted forever because they were just going to record over it. So like that happens too. Like that's just like when you think about how much stuff is being made, things are going to be lost. But I think that the importance of preservation is that this is always somebody's work that I think if they put the effort into it, should be preserved in one way or another. I think it's interesting in terms of like lost media that maybe should remain lost, in terms of like stuff that shows people dying, very like grim stuff like that. But Yeah. So that was a good topic, and I think ties in well with my topic.
Look at our brains.
Look at us, as always, just linked up.
Yeah.
So, JD, how do you feel about long form musical projects?
I love them. You know that I'm a music nerd.
I know you are. Yeah. So from the top for our audience, JD, you don't have the option of backing out of here, but audience, this is going to be like a fairly grim topic.
I'm being held hostage.
Yeah, JD, you're stuck here. If you leave, I'm still going to be talking to myself. So
I'm going to share the screen and accidentally click leave.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about dementia.
I'm moving my glasses because I'm tired of seeing.
Yeah, you don't need to read nothing. It's on. We can chill. We can just sit with the discomfort that's going to come. Yeah, so this is going to come into dementia is going to come up. It's a serious topic, and I want to treat it with respect. But if that's not something you're in the mind space to hear about or think about, skip this section of the podcast, skip the rest of the episode. Thank you for listening so far. And don't listen to the album Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. So, JD, are you familiar with The Caretaker at all?
I think when we were first looking up topics, you mentioned it, and then I was like, get out of my brain. So,
sure. Okay.
No.
So let me give you a little backstory. In 1999, a UK ambient music producer, Leland James Kirby, created an alias known as The Caretaker. The name was inspired by The Shining. If you haven't seen The Shining, you've still seen The Shining, right? It's like a huge movie. So I'm not going to feel too bad for spoiling the final shot, which Kirby has cited as inspiration, right? So the final shot was set the stage. The camera slowly dollies down a hallway of the Overlook Hotel as big band music plays through an empty building. Right. The shot reaches the end of the hall and it continues to zoom in on a photo centered on the wall, showing a packed ballroom with a party in full swing, dated July 4th, 1921. There's a couple more details that I'll leave out so I don't fully spoil it. But it's really that vibe, right? That seemingly abandoned place that was once so full of life and promise that inspired the creation of The Caretaker. So the first album took recordings of British pop from the 1920s and 1930s and edited them digitally to make them sound like they were playing through time, like something you'd hear as you walked through a room in the seemingly abandoned house, right? Haunted house music. The early era of The Caretaker was fundamental to the development of hauntology as a musical genre. Are you familiar with that at all?
I am familiar with hauntology, but not specific to the music space.
Music, sure. Okay, yeah, so yeah, hauntology, as the name implies, has to do with hauntings, but it doesn't really have to do with kind of ghost adventures, paranormal research stuff. Jacques Derrida coined the term hauntology and described it as the way that the present moment can only be understood through the interpretation of the past and the anticipation of the future, right? It's also worth noting that it's a pun in French. Nice one, Derrida. Since the H is silent, it sounds the same as ontology, which is the study of being and existence. What things exist and what are the relationships between these things that exist, right? The hard H, hauntology, understanding of experience can be related to music, right? At any given moment, we may only be hearing one note, but we perceive melody by comparing this current note with the moments from the past and anticipating more notes in the future. In this way, Derrida would describe our experiences as humans as ghostly. We are affected by things that are not present, but are real. Mark Fisher popularized this term in the space of cultural analysis and related it to how we are haunted by the past in media, and importantly, how the future now can best be conceived of in works from the past. For Fisher, this comes down to the impacts of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism does not allow us to conceive of futures outside of the current neoliberal norm. Our concepts of the future can only be revisited by revisiting and rehashing older concepts, right? In a word, postmodernism, right? We are no longer in a cultural space that allows for imaginations of a bright future. We can only examine the past. This ties in with the waves of nostalgia we've experienced, right? We think of Stranger Things, the revival of synth pop, the return to early 2000s fashion trends. All of these are referential to the past. If we want to imagine a future, this can only really be done by revisiting old works and seeing how they imagine the future. To quote Fisher, what it means to be in the 21st century is to have a 20th century culture on higher definition screens. The Caretaker's first works take this logic to the extreme, right? Using modern music production techniques to alter songs from the early 20th century. The Caretaker's first three albums more or less adhered to this process, but the third album, Kirby began to feel like this project had either run its course or he needed to pivot. Right, and that pivot wound up being the release of 72 MP3s and what came to be known as theoretically pure anti-retrograde amnesia. Each track was labeled as a memory, and they sounded less like chopped and screwed big band music and more in kind of noise, drone, that kind of space. Anti-retrograde amnesia also holds a special place within Fisher's concept of cultural hauntology. Anti-retrograde amnesia is a condition where the person has older central memories but is unable to create new ones, right? So for Fisher, the concepts of this condition can mirror the states of culture under late-stage capitalism, as we are incapable of creating new cultural forms and can only orient ourselves through our past. So Mark Fisher described the album in his book, Ghosts of My Life, quote, "If his earlier records suggested spaces that were mildewed but still magnificent, grand hotels gone to seed, long-abandoned ballrooms, theoretically pure anti-retrograde amnesia invokes sites that have deteriorated into total dereliction, where every unidentified noise is pregnant with menace. It's a tonal change, but this fixation with memory would continue through the rest of the Caretaker's albums. The Caretaker fully cemented the shift from haunted ballrooms to cognitive decline with the album An Empty Bliss Beyond This World in 2011. It was a smash hit by ambient noise music standards, right? Getting listed as the 4th best album of the year by the online musical zine Tiny Mixtapes, and Pitchfork ranked it as the 14th greatest ambient album of all time. The album is kind of a synthesis of the earlier haunted ballroom works with distorted big band music and the more drony noise of theoretically pure anti-retrograde amnesia. Thematically, Kirby has said that he was inspired by the way that music has the ability to reconnect Alzheimer's patients with their memories of not only songs, but people, places, and time. There's some evidence that musical memory is partially independent of other memories, so this can be preserved even as other memories fade away. So, JD, do you have an Alzheimer's banger that you'd like played as our minds degrade in 50 years?
Oh my God. So deeply, 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 like Plastic Love by Maria Takeuchi.
Okay, Plastic Love. Just in case.
just in case. But yeah, it's one of those ones that I think like it's a very good picture of a long period of my brain when it comes to music and the things that I liked during it and my thoughts on music at the time. So I think as my memory fails me and starts to get funky, I think that's the one.
That's fundamental core musical memory for you.
Yeah.
Super cool. I've never heard it, so I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh my God, Ben, you haven't heard Plastic Love?
I don't think so.
This is like you going, you've never seen Twilight. It's like the internet song.
I mean, I'll have to look it up. I don't recognize it from the name.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that. So if you're trying to get into the Caretaker, I would recommend starting with An Empty Bliss at Beyond This World. Maybe you can stop there too, if you because what comes after is sadder. Kirby said he wanted to end the Caretaker as a project after the release of An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, but the reception of the album made him kind of reconsider, right? He decided that the last frontier of memory for this project would be to create a series examining the stages of dementia. This brings us to Everywhere at the End of Time, the final Caretaker release, which came out over the course of 3 years from 2016 to 2019. As a side note, when Kirby announced the release of Everywhere at the End of Time, he described it as giving the project dementia, meaning it would be the last Caretaker release. But people thought that Kirby was saying that he had dementia, and so he had to like go back and be like, no, it's not me. It's just like the project. It's not. It's the character that I'm doing, not like an actual, not me. I'm fine. There are 6 stages within the album, roughly coinciding with the Global Deterioration Scale, a tool used to assess the progression of patients' primary degenerative dementia. There are 7 stages in the Global Deterioration Scale, but the first stage is no cognitive decline, right? It's basically no symptoms, undetectable. So that's why it was not included. The album art was created by Ivan Seal, a painter who explores similar themes of memory and familiarity with his work. A lot of his work aims to represent things that feel familiar but are somehow unidentifiable. And I think that it does fit well with the album. And if you do listen, I would encourage you to, consider the album artwork as well. And I do have that for you, so we can take a little look at that. Yeah, so, right, we have like the first one is kind of like, looks like rolled paper. The second one is kind of a vase, but they're not. If you look, the more you look at them, the less familiar these are, right? And these are for all 6 releases, the 6 stages of the album or albums, right? So they're all kind of recognizable. You can kind of see what they are, but they're still abstract and you're not totally able to place it.
This reminds me of like those pictures that were like online of like, it's like a photo of like a place and there's objects in it and you cannot
name the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, I know what that is, but what the fuck is that?
Yeah. That came up a lot in like the research of like people kind of comparing like Seal's work with that like internet phenomenon, because a lot of those are like AI generated, right? Like or like where it's like, I don't think they know what this is. Like this is not like a thing, but it's almost a thing. And that's kind of like what Ivan Seal has done for like most of his paintings, is like, this is a thing, but it's not a thing that we know, but it's kind of meant to be like, I have memories of this. It just doesn't quite fit.
Yeah. I really love the first one on the second row, because it reminds me of like
the girl with,
yes.
To me, it reminds me of the girl with the earring, kind of.
Yes.
It's very good. But yeah, take a look at the video that we have for this. Take a look at the art. I mean, his art is it's beautiful.
It's so good.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the album artwork. And in any case, the project finally finished in 2019, and it's mainly been accessible through YouTube. He does not put any of his stuff on Spotify or any streaming services. He's very anti-streaming services, where it now has 31 million views, which is a lot for an ambient concept album that is 6.5 hours long, right? So where did this popularity come from, right? TikTok, was really where it came from. This is where it blew up, right? The first instance I was able to find was from a user named Sam J, who posted a video with this sound that has now been used in about 7,000 videos in August. And I'm just going to play the sound for you.
This is so weird. I've never heard this before.
Oh, really?
But this feels like
familiar.
Why does this feel like definitely like my grandparents have played this on a Sunday and I'm like asleep and they want everybody to wake up?
That's the vibe, right? Is like it's familiar, right? It feels familiar, even though I never listened to British. I mean, I don't think even my grandparents listened to like 1930s British big band music.
It felt like old. And for some reason, I'm like, it's warm. It feels warm.
Yeah, it's nice. It's kind of comforting. So I have some other sounds, but I think we can just kind of skip through that since it's more of a pain in the ass. The videos, the sounds are all included in the script. Check them out. They all, the point is they got like thousands of videos associated with them, and like, millions of views, and that wound up driving people to the YouTube channel, right? So that first track that you heard is the first track on the album, and started kind of blowing up. And there was like a trend, right, where people would post these videos, and it was people posting about the album and kind of discussing the emotional impact that the album had on them, right? People were being like, oh, the album broke me, or they're saying that they couldn't stop crying, that listening to it was, quote, the definition of pain. I think that was Sam J's quote. These videos gained a wave of people who doubted it could be that bad, and then would post their own reactions to the album, right? People were saying like, quote, if I don't have a mental breakdown by the end of this, I'm going to sue y'all. In response to doubt and jokes came people's warnings about the potential emotional impacts of this album. Quote, don't listen to it if you're feeling depressed. This album can really destroy your mental health. Never listen to it more than once. That kind of thing, right? And of course, that's going to draw more people to listen to the album, right? Gradually, I think the place of this album and the songs has shifted. In 2023, it seems more like that first sound, the Sam J song, is being used more as background music for creepypasta videos, right? So it's not necessarily part of the discussion as much, but the popularity of the sound has persisted. I don't think it's like a coincidence that the most popular sounds are based on that first track, right? So the first track is Just a Burning Memory. Firstly, as you might expect from an album about cognitive decline, the early tracks are a lot more melodious. The first stage dropped in 2016. And there were actually some reviewers who felt like Kirby had regressed musically. They were kind of accusing him of doing like a retread of his earlier ballroom work when the first part came out, which, it seems like a fair accusation, but if you listen to the first album, especially after listening to something from the Haunted Ballroom era, it sounds kind of the same. It's like a return to the earlier styles of production. It also gives the sense of the concept of the album that the character of the caretaker had developed dementia, right? So the first stages represent the caretaker reminiscing on their past and their earlier works. And it just so happens that the caretaker's earlier works were directly inspired by concepts of ghosts and haunted spaces. So I think it makes it a pretty valid thing for a creepypasta backing track, because it is like supposed to sound like it's from like a haunted ballroom, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you're picking a 20-second clip from a 6.5 hour concept album, you're going to miss some of the nuance. There's a fair share of articles and reviews questioning whether or not the popularity of Everywhere at the End of Time is a good thing or not. Does it degrade the art? Is it trivializing to turn what is meant to be an exploration of a neurodegenerative disease into a social media challenge and spooky meme background music? JD, I'm going to ask you for the final answer on that.
Does the popularity degrade the sort of meaning of it?
Yeah.
Is the general question of it.
Or does it trivialize it to make it like a TikTok thing? Because that seems to be like the gist of some of like the reviewers and people that were talking about that.
I think it's hard to sort of like put a boundary on something like that, especially when there's like such a big interest on it. So like, does it trivialize it? You can be like, yeah, it does, because it's like, this is like a deep examination of like the state of being, that kind of thing. Like, obviously, there's obviously like, you're going to get like the don't listen to it kind of people to like clamor up on it. And then like, maybe there's like a couple of hundred of them out of like 1,000, every like 1,000 people to be like, I see the sort of like depth of this and that kind of thing. And like, I don't know. It's a very hard question, because like you can ask that of like so many other like deeply thought out like impactful pieces of art that then get like made into like, hey guys, challenge time.
Right. It's like, are you engaging with the art on the same level if you're being like, I'm going to do the spooky challenge of listening to this whole album that's supposed to break your mind or something?
And maybe that's your way of engaging in the art itself, right? Not everyone walks into the museum and sees this huge painting as like, oh, this is what I see of it. Some people just turn to the sides and say, that's a lot of paint. I would like to eat that level of paint. But you engaged with it one way or another. So you engaged with it one way or another, whether it's in a nice way that feels like you've sort of accepted the meaning of it, or at least kind of interpreted it in your own way, versus like, I want to eat this and put it in my mouth.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think Kirby's kind of with us as well on this, because Kirby back in 2020 was like, whoa, this is blowing up. Why am I getting so many views on a YouTube thing from like a year ago? And so he was interviewed by The Quietist, which is like a online music journal. And he was asked, does the challenge, is it damaging to the work? And he responded, I think you will always have people who defend the work and are passionate about how it's perceived. So it's natural that they will be upset with it being seen as a challenge. Dementia is not a trivial subject matter. From what I see from messages I received, it's also given younger people an understanding into the symptoms a person with dementia may face. Ultimately, if younger people see that music can be an experience that goes deeper beyond what's being manufactured and bombarded at them, then independent musicians benefit. So, full disclosure, I did know about the Caretaker before the challenge gained popularity in 2020. I'm kind of a hipster. I'm pretty cool. I have good music taste. I listened to An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, but I had never listened to Everywhere at the End of Time because it's 6 hours. Now I have listened to it twice. I do think that the trigger warnings are sincere. It is a challenging piece of art. It's in the nature of the internet that a lot of content about this album will say stuff like, this album will break you, the darkest album I've ever heard, or framing it like a challenge, right? That's kind of just, it's being online. That's how engagement gets made. But I want to kind of offer my own reaction to it, because this album broke me. Seriously, it's not an easy listen. The first phase is very pretty. As you heard, it's kind of why the early review accused Kirby of romanticizing dementia, right? Because it does feel comfortable and familiar. It's nostalgic. You feel kind of warm listening to it. In stage 2, you begin to see the cracks. The melodies are still there, but there's more static, more crackle, and the haze is creeping in. In stage 3, the familiar melodies begin to distort. They're still there, and you're still in the early stages at this point, when there's still something for your mind to hold on to. At stage 4, you begin to lose the melodies, and the album turns from distorted oldies to drone and noise. You still have 4 hours left at that point. Stage 4 still has hints of old melodies, snippets you can almost place, but by stage 5, these moments of melody are just disorienting. They're overlapping, they're competing. There is no foundation. There's nothing to hold on to. The bottom completely falls out, and you're just like in the abyss of drone noise. Stage 6 is described by the liner notes as without description, and I cannot really argue with that. And then the last 10 minutes are one of the hardest things I've ever listened to. It just absolutely wrecked my shit. It's so yeah. I don't think that this album, I don't want to spoil it. If it sounds appealing to you, listen to it. It's a very emotional thing to go through. I don't think this album exists in the same space of internet horror that you and I usually like to spend our time, right? But it's an effective existential horror because dementia is it's not a natural part of the aging process, right? It's something that's not uncommon, though. While people age 65 to 69 have a 3% of developing dementia, those odds double every additional 5 years after that. So by the time you're in your 90s, you have like a 35% chance of having dementia, 36, right? As the album illustrates, the full progression of dementia will gradually take everything. It is a process you will be both aware and unaware of. You will forget that you're forgetting. A lot of people have drawn comparisons between the Caretaker's work and William Utermullen's late period self-portraits after he was diagnosed with dementia. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Utermullen was diagnosed with dementia in 1995 and was encouraged to continue painting. He worked on a series from 1996 through 2000. And for the listeners/watchers, I'm going to share some of those paintings with you. So on the left, we have a painting from the 1980s. This was about 10 years before he was diagnosed. You can see that it's good. He was a talented painter. On the right is the first painting after he was diagnosed called Blue Skies. You can see that he's kind of holding up the table. He's looking a little anxious about it. But it's in his kind of later period style at this point. And then we get into 1995 to 1996. These are the first couple of years of dementia. You can see that there's still very high quality, right? Like he's got great artistic flair still going on. There's a lot of style there, but also a lot of technical ability. 1997 to 1999, we see that it's a little less refined. It's kind of not quite as tight as it was. The lines are becoming a little bit more wavy. And then finally we get into 2000 to 2001, where the forms are kind of still there. It's still ahead. The more if you look at it, you can kind of recognize features that are on heads. There's a nose on one of them. There's a mouth. And then the one on the right is the last one, which has just nothing really. Mm-hmm. It's called a self-portrait erased head because it was never completed, and it is also just there's nothing recognizable going on with it. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to chart his decline, right? And if you look at that, you can think, oh, well, that's where it ends. But Utermullen lived for another 7 years after that last painting or last drawing, right? When he died, his wife, Patricia Redmond, said, quote, "He was really dead long before that. Bill died in 2000 when the disease meant that he was no longer able to draw. I have people in my family that have gone through dementia. I think that a lot of us have heard that same kind of sentiment when it comes to people with dementia. Mm-hmm. It's the final silence and isolation that is the most terrifying thing about this. Mm-hmm. That after everything is lost, your autonomy, your memories, your sense of self, your contact with reality, that there may still be years where your body continues long after you've become lost in your own subconscious. It's not a horror that can be contained in a 6-hour album or a series of paintings, but it is something that can be explored. It is uncomfortable art, but it should be considered." As I said, this was a bummer. That's what I got.
Would you cut that silence or just leave it in there? I think that's a good reaction to keep. That's a lot.
Yeah, this was probably the most existential I felt doing research of just like, there was like, after listening to the album the first time, I think I just kind of sat there for like a couple hours. Uh-huh. And I was just like, just kind of lost in the sauce.
I bet. Oh my goodness. Some stuff I have for you is just like a general like music consumption like sort of question for you. But
yeah, sure.
Do you generally listen to like things that go on for this long?
No, I'm definitely like, I like to break stuff up. I'm not like, I enjoy like noise and drone and ambient music. But I'm definitely not like, oh, let me find like a 6-hour thing to just listen to in one sitting. That's not generally how I consume media.
Yeah. So like, how did this like sort of new kind of thing like starting off with the lighter questions.
Yeah.
Like, how did that sort of like challenge how you kind of like sat through this and like actively listened? Because this is something that you're going to write about like in a bit kind of thing. Like how, like in terms of active listening, but also like having to like take note of it. Like what, in what ways were you like challenged?
I mean, so I definitely have a hard time focusing in general. And I do think that it became much more reflective than I think generally. Like a lot of times I'll have music on and I'll be doing something else, or in this case, I tried to kind of mainly focus on the music, at least the first time, which was a challenge. And something that happens throughout the album is that you'll hear those same loops, like that first 20 seconds that you heard, that first track will come back and it'll be revisited and it'll be distorted more and it'll be less familiar until finally it's still technically there in like the last couple hours. It pops up again, but it's completely indistinguishable from the drone. It's like so hidden in the mix at that point and so distorted. So I think it did make it just a more reflective thing. And in terms of experiencing it, it was much more like my memory's not great. So definitely there was moments where I would check and I was like, did I just restart the album? Because like I'd hear that same loop, or I'd hear like a loop and I'd be like, I think I just heard that like a couple hours ago. Am I back at the beginning? Like just you start to feel disoriented. You start to feel like that sense of like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. And then like the last 4 hours of drone are just like you're kind of like, oh, finally, okay, like a melody is creeped back in, but then you're also like, oh, the melodies are so fucked up now that it's not like even pleasant to listen to almost.
Yeah. And I was, as someone who does also listen to like drone music and like computer music and then like ambient music, I can sense that I'm like a little bit interested in like maybe like an hour of this, right? But I do the challenge of it, not like the TikTok challenge. There's like the challenge of overcoming the 6 hours and making it through in not necessarily making it through in one piece, but like in, like you said, there's got to be like a reflection on that if you're like actively listening to it versus like playing it in the background and then like going offhand, going like, wait, what hour am I in?
Yeah.
But you're actually just like, hour 2. I'm now feeling a sense of ringing in my ear kind of thing. And it does make me want to listen to it in a sort of like inquisitive way, but also I don't think I'm mentally.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing is like listening. If you don't want to be in like a bummer for a couple days, I wouldn't recommend listening to it because it definitely, like I was at the beginning of recording, I was like, and then like for a while after, which was like just fucking sad. I was just like, fuck me, like everything is so impermanent, in that kind of way. I think framing it as a challenge, I mean, I think that is accurate. Like I think maybe that encourages more people to go all the way through it too, because it's a slog, like I said, the first 2 hours are like the early stages. And I think that's something that this work captures well, is like with William Utermohlen's thing, right? Like we see those are still like the early stages of dementia, right? In his art, in his drawings. And I think that as much as somebody who doesn't have dementia can kind of create that experience of like going beyond the contact with reality, like kind of like losing touch with the world as it exists outside of yourself. I think that is captured well in this album. Yeah. So.
Oh man. Yeah. If we step out of the space of the context of it being in this terrible terror of a feeling. Yeah. We discussed music and horror and sort of thriller spaces. I want a thought for you is to think back on the fear and music elements that like what are like some of the key elements of this other than like this sort of like droning on and sort of like, oh, did I hear this like a bit ago? Like that sort of particularly triggered any like sort of feelings of fear, like anxiety, sort of like, that kind of thing. Like what are some like elements that can be like used
like musically. Yeah. So I think that there was like, I watched some other people like react to it, and they were talking about like how they kept expecting like a jump scare, right? Like it does a very effective mode of kind of like building up just like unrelenting tension. I think that's where the drone music kind of shines, right? It's just having this kind of constant, right? It's going on. And there were like the brief, I think having these very distorted kind of like, lots of reverb, lots of various other kind of effects on and things, did make things feel less and less real progressively. Right. There's like a whole, there's videos like the Caretaker iceberg explained, where people are guessing like, oh, there's probably like sounds from like real nursing homes, and like there's no evidence of that. But I think that there is like, there's sounds in there that don't generally go in music, right? Like it does sound like kind of hearing clips of like kind of found, just kind of ambient recording stuff. I mean, like it's weird because I think like maybe like I think it would be affecting even if you went in with no context for what it was.
Like you would have enough context of what is a sound that gives you anxiety and gives you some sort of fear, or like makes you feel uneasy enough that like if you went into this without context, that this is supposed to be something that brings you like some sort of
right. I think without going in, if you went in completely cold to it, you would still feel like that sense of kind of like crushing anxiety. Like I think that there's like the elements of like things becoming less and less familiar that is present from repeating the loops. And I think that there's other tricks that are kind of used where I think like as it progresses, at the beginning, it's like complete songs, right? And then like stage 3, the songs start to cut out midway through. So when you're expecting it to continue, it stops. And then you just have like a couple seconds of silence. Maybe like the crackle continues, right? So I think that, and like just like generally like the fact he does everything digitally is like interesting, because like I saw like comparisons to like disintegration loops, like that project where the guy just kind of replayed like analog tape and let it degrade over time. But everything that is done to make it sound like super like it's being degraded is done digitally. So that makes like all the kind of the cracks and pops and like little bits seem more intentional.
That does, because like when I purposely like make things sound like it would be in a concert hall, those kinds of things. You have to make like intentional decisions about like how far is this reverb going to go, like how much of a person speaking still comes through, or whether it just now sounds like someone talking from the other side of a wall, and you're like, I know that this is in this language, but I have absolutely no idea
what is being said.
So I think that's cool. I think you like mentioned specifically like you would go through like a couple of like hours of this, and you'd hear something like slightly familiar, and you're like, wait, I think I heard this like a bit ago. That is particularly very interesting to me in terms of like memory, right? I have seen some like videos of caretakers of people with dementia, and how like a person could just be going through it, and like in the space of like they have no familiarity with anyone, but they're like giving off like they're like, this is someone I know kind of thing, and then like they have a blip of like, this is something I completely remember, and I completely remember something about you, and then it just goes forward again. So that reminds me of like those moments like when people share that like it's been this for a while, and then all of a sudden they have a moment of like, I remember this.
And I think that like another factor of why I feel like it is it's a respectfully done art project. It's not like him. I don't think you can really accuse him of trying to like make it seem like cool or like crazy or edgy or anything like that, right? Is if we like go to like the track listings and like the liner notes, kind of describe each stage and what he did to kind of replicate actual aspects of dementia. And then you have names like, post-awareness confusions, a confusion so thick you forget forgetting, a brutal bliss beyond this empty defeat, advanced plaque entanglements, because that's kind of what causes dementia, right? Is like the buildup of plaque in your brain. So I think it like the things that were put there were based on his because he did research like dementia and tried to kind of replicate things accurately, which I think is another thing that having the knowledge about that does kind of make it more affecting, because you can think like, what does this represent in like the progression of this? But
that's to sort of wrap it up in my part, just a little bit, like, you asked me what my song would be, and it was Plastic Love by Maria Takeuchi. What is yours?
Probably 1 Week by the Bare Naked Ladies. I think that song was very fundamental to me as a child.
Good choice. What's that other? That made me think, like, what is that other one? That Chumbawamba.
Oh, Tub Thumping. That could be up there as well. Yeah, that's definitely like one I've played into the ground as a kid.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, that's a good choice, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Then I'm also worried it could be like, like when I was like a teenager and I worked at Six Flags, and it was just like the endless like Justin Timberlake, like, it's like in my mirror. Like, that might be it.
Yeah, and then what if oh my goodness. Yeah, like you have, because you remember that song, and then like the time and space where you were like the most intimate with the song, and you're just like, wow, I work at Six Flags like forever now.
Scrubbing like pans that were full of week old carnitas or whatever.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Quite possible. So I thought like an interesting connection between our two things was like memory.
Yes.
And the preservation of our memories, and what remains afterwards, and how we can preserve the past. And then I was thinking, as you were talking, a little bit about how, we talked about hauntology and the importance of memory, of cultural memory, in creating or imagining a future, or just how it's kind of being perpetuated all based on memory. And that potentially the loss of media, like lost media, could kind of represent loss of memory, right? We are losing our framework for understanding our culture and where we come from, and with that, we are losing. What else are we losing? If lost media continues to be a thing, if we lose more and more shit.
Yeah, because it's like a screenshot of that specific moment when something was being made, and then think of like 100 things missing in that space, and what those 100 things talked about, and then like, do we lose that conversation as we lose that piece of media, as we let it decay on accident because we thought that it would last forever, like it exists on the internet or something like that, but now blah blah blah, right? Like if you think of like there's a bunch of Vine compilations online. We have them preserved as YouTube videos. We have them recycled onto TikTok. But there are people who may have created Vines that were amazing to them, hilarious to them, but now you can't get the link for it because, the Vine link is not working anymore. It's a dead link. It is now like a memory of, remember that time? Like, we'll always forever have the, like, look at all those chickens kid, or like, I smell like beef kid. But like, what about the tiny pieces of the rest of us that were once on Vine capturing like a funny little jump from somewhere to another place, and it's like gone. It's like the impermanence of something that we thought, like the common thing of like, it's on the internet, it'll be up there forever. Right? It's like we have that belief, but like it's not necessarily true. Like there is still a sense of impermanence online.
Yeah,
like,
but it's not.
For the idea of like something being forever hosted is like websites can just shut down, never tell you, links can change, and you don't know where the new thing is at. So like, it's the impermanence of something that we believe to be permanent. Like, I love all the people that are like, I'm getting receipts for everything, because you're like an accidental like archivist, right? Yeah, you are like probably the best archivists of our time. Our parents, our mothers, right? Who are eternally taking pictures of everything, no matter how much you get irritated, but like being told to stop and pause for a second because they want a picture. Like they are like the family archivists. Like I follow on Instagram the of archives, and it's like how do people and families like work to like preserve like each other's like memories? Like who are the people who are gathering the like printed photos, who are gathering recipes of people, right? And it's like that, like it's important to do it at like a larger way of like preserving aspects of culture, like whether it's just like a random film. Like, do you want to preserve Sausage Party? Maybe not, but you gotta, because like that's still a snapshot.
It's part of our culture.
Yeah, like what people like anthropomorphic food, and then like, but also like the personal like preservation of like recipes that were written on like a piece of paper in the wall, that kind of thing. Take a photo of that, like digitize it, or like physically make like a thing of it. So yeah. I mean, I think like listening to the album just generally kind of made me think about like the impermanence of memory. And what remains, and like generally the beginning of the project I think was about like like back like the 1920s and 30s were contemporary in their time, right? Like all the lost media from the silent film era. Yes.
And that was cutting edge. That was people being like, this is the craziest shit I've ever seen, my God. And it's like all those people are dead, and now their work is gone as well. And so what remains?
You're essentially the concept of like you died, but there's like pieces of you out there in the world. Your laughter is still out there, like a video of you is still out there, like your work is still out there, but now these people are like, they are dead in a sense of their physical body, but also in their work, right? They might be remembered by a person who's like deeply interested in this niche topic, but like everyone else, like, do you die in like the memories of like other people as well? So neat stuff.
Memories, archives,
memories all along. Cats.
Everybody make some good memories, have fun.
Seriously,
none of this really matters. It's all fine. Just have fun. Be a nice person. And
like it's so like I think about this like now of like all the people who used to like make vlogs in my high school on YouTube, but that's like they are accidentally like archiving a point of our lives. What I look like, what I dress like, and that kind of thing. Like girl making like a secret Instagram of things that you liked at that time, and then like writing that down and like finding it at a later point. You're like, holy shit, this is what I like this time. Like taking pictures of things is good. Like, okay, like I'm telling you right now, let me look at how many photos I have on my I have 256 gig phone thing, non-expandable. I have 22,655 recent photos. I have the only thing I generally clean up is like my screenshots, so I have 390 of them, but I have 22,000, more than 22,000 photos. At one point I did have like 40,000.
Big numbers.
So I'm like, come on, like, do I really need all these pictures of cats? Yeah. Like, and to think about this is like, I literally only have immediate access to me 3 baby photos. And they are on my phone.
Right.
Look at me. Everyone can see this.
Baby JD.
Right? I was in the olden times where I had a wooden stroller.
That's what that is. Wow.
Yeah, it's a wooden stroller. Ye olden times. But yeah, I literally have only these 3 baby photos. Like, so it's like the precious physical media digitized. But my photos are rotting away. Yeah, everybody, make some memories.
Make some memories.
Do a little TikTok of like, I made this food today, because now you're like, remember what I've made that day, but I don't know. You got it. You got your recipes. Take those screenshots, baby.
Take photos. Keep a journal. Do whatever you got to do.
Oh, heck
Because the memory stuff is not going to last, and physical stuff won't last either, but it'll probably last longer. So
it'll last you while you're here,
and that's what really matters. At the end of the day, when you're gone. That shit doesn't matter to anybody. You're done.
Your money, done.
Enjoy your time, baby.
Hey.
This episode was written and produced by Ben and JD. For all our sources, please head to the website in the description below. If you would like to reach out with a comment, suggestion, or share an experience with one of our topics today, send us a message at icecreamumeme@gmail.com. If you know who celebrity number 6 is, keep it to yourself, because we're going to figure that out.
Yeah,
we're gonna figure that out.
If you know the song, though, everybody knows that in our ulterior motives. Hit us up, please, before you tell anybody.
Us first. And we'll give you credit. Obviously, we're not going to steal credit from you. We promise. No.
I might. You don't know. I'm the devious one over here. Don't tell us who celebrity number 6 is. Leave us alone.
We want to find that out ourselves. All the music for the podcast is provided by Yager Frank. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.